Hello, good morning. Today I would like to explain exactly what Japanese horror is. Japanese horror, also known as J-horror, is a horror fiction derived from popular culture in Japan, generally noted for its unique thematic and conventional treatment of the horror genre, differing from the traditional Western representation of horror. Japanese horror tends to focus on psychological horror, tension building, or suspense, and the supernatural, particularly involving ghosts that are also known as yurei, as they're referred to, and poltergeists. Now that you have the fundamentals down of what Japanese horror actually is, how exactly does Japanese society affect J horror as a whole? Well, there are actually 8 separate motivations to this, and we will discuss all 8 of them. Starting with number 1, cultural fear of and the supernatural. And I will let my group member, Danny, take over from here.
Number 1. Cultural fear and the supernatural. In Japan, the supernatural and spiritual world are intricately woven into everyday life. Shinto and Buddhist beliefs have long held that spirits, aka yurei, and deities inhabit natural objects and spaces. The idea that the supernatural is always present and just beyond human understanding is a powerful source of fear. J-horror often reflects this fear of invisible, otherworldly forces, such as spirits or cursed objects, in a way that feels deeply tied to these beliefs. For example, a yurei, which are spirits that are restless or bound to the world due to unfinished business or a wrong death. And there's the onryo, which is a ghost mainly focused on vengeance. Sadako being a famous example from the 1998 film Ringu. Number 2. Social isolation and alienation. Modern Japanese society, especially in urban settings like Tokyo, has seen a rise in social isolation, high-pressure work environments, and a sense of detachment, which contributes to feelings of alienation. This is reflected in many J-horror films, where characters are often in eerie, claustrophobic environments, such as old houses, empty schools, or abandoned buildings, and are confronted with the consequences of their actions or relationships. The theme of isolation is prominent, whether it's in the form of technological alienation, as seen in Ringu and Pulse, the generation gap in Ju-on the Grudge, or emotional detachment in hyper-connected but spiritually disconnected society.
Number 3, historical trauma and the legacy of war. Japan's history of war, particularly World War II, continues to haunt its culture, particularly in terms of collective trauma, guilt, and memory. J horror often deals with the dark aftermath of past actions, such as the haunting of war crimes, family secrets, or unresolved history. This is reflected in films like Noroi, which ties together ancient curses with modern day consequences. The idea of guilt and punishments from past generations haunting the present is a recurring theme in J horror. Actually, this is one of the first original starts to the Godzilla series or other kaiju or radiation monsters.
As you should know, Japan has an ongoing tension between modern and traditional work. J-horror often explores this tension between these two forces, with the old superstition and the supernatural beliefs clashing with the rapid advancements of technology and urbanization. This theme is seen in films like Pulse, Chiaro, with with the presence of technology significantly, the internet and virtual space creates a very bridge between the living and the dead, which this suggests that the digital age has a new and somewhat more dangerous way for the supernatural to invade everyday life, which does sound horrifying a little bit. In Japan's culture, there is a very strong emphasis on family, social harmony, and group identity. And these values are often at odds with individual desires, which leading to conflicts can manifest in horror narratives. Family members might suffer together due to a curse or a breakdown of social order, which is a common source of terror. Family often seen as a unit of emotional and sometimes spiritual support, which is sometimes depicted as the very place where horror begins, as June owns the grudge, which the curse spreads within household and destroys family bonds.
Number 6. Aesthetic and cinematic influences. Japanese filmmakers have developed a distinct visual style in horror films, which is deeply tied to the country's aesthetic sensibilities. Minimalist, subtle visuals, often involving long, lingering shots, high intention, and stark contrast between the living and the dead, create an unsettling atmosphere. This restrained approach to horror is a reflection of broader cultural tendencies in Japan, where understatement and subtlety are higher valued in art and communication. In particular, J horror avoids the overt gore and shock tactics often used in Western horror films. Instead, it creates an emotional and psychological horror relying more on the atmosphere, sound design, and slow building tension. The fear of technology and modernity. While Japan is often seen as the pinnacle of technology and advancement, there is also a subtle fear surrounding this progress. In J horror, technology is frequently portrayed as a medium that brings evil into the real world rather than something that empowers or protects. Films like Ringu, The Ring, Cairo, or Pulse, and One Missed Call tapped into this fear of technology becoming an unimaginable force, as when the internet, phones, or television serve as conduits for the supernatural or tragic events.
J-horror is often the most psychological than physical genre, which this genre specifically frequently focuses on the international turmoil of its characters, especially with regards to guilt, fear, and the unknowable. In Japanese society, the concept of losing face or maintaining societal harmony can drive people to hide their true emotions and pain, which is often expressed through supernatural occurrences or haunting imagery in J-horror films.